A lot of people know Fortis from different places. Some know the YouTube channel, some know the loan operator system, some know Battlefit, some know the courses, some know the podcasts. But I actually don't think most people fully understand what Fortis is really trying to build. Is it a training company? Is it a firearms company? Is it a fitness brand? Is it a community? Today I'm sitting down with Deon Coetzee, the founder and CEO of Fortis, and I'm asking him directly, what is Fortis actually building? This is episode 1 of Inside Fortis. Deon, good morning. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you. Finally, we have time to chat.
What exactly is Fortis busy building?
Yeah, look, that's actually a very good question, because I think a lot of people see all the moving parts, but they don't necessarily see how we connect them all. Um, in a nutshell, I would say that the answer is we were never trying to build another or just a firearms training company. We have always been, and we were always trying to build a system.
If you say system, can you maybe explain to the viewers what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. Keep in mind that we are in the self-defense industry and the system is built around that. So then you look at most people's self-defense journey is actually fragmented. All right. So they would do a handgun course now, maybe do another course in 6 months' time, or maybe in a year's time. They would buy gear. They would be watching YouTube videos, go to the range once a month, once every 2, 3 months, doesn't matter. But there's no formal structure behind that. There's no progression, there's no accountability, there's no pressure testing. So what actually happens then, people start feeling capable, but without actually becoming capable.
Are you saying the issue seems to be consistency?
Yeah, I would say so. I would think consistency is a part of it. It's not just consistency or is consistency. I would say it's a part of it. But I think people misunderstand what competence actually is. So competence obviously is not owning a firearm and doing your normal competency. That doesn't mean that you are competent with that firearm. And I'm going to get flack for this one. It means that you've written an exam to prove that you are okay and of sound mind and understanding of what you have taught. Competence is not just attending a course. Competence is not buying expensive gear. And obviously, competence is not posting targets and stuff on social media. I would say real capability is more a couple of elements. So yes, consistency, decision making, emotional control, pressure management, repetition over years, and physical resilience. And all of that together obviously takes time to develop and go into what then becomes competent.
Do you think social media has made this problem worse?
Indeed, I think one of the biggest enemies of the South African firearm owner is social media, because the stuff that is out on social media can quickly lead you along a false path. And there's so much of it out there that you don't know, what is true and what isn't true. So if you're brand new to the firearms industry specifically, you might start following and believing doctrines and ways of and stuff without that. So yes, I definitely think social media has made it worse. I think it's one of the industry's biggest enemies, and we obviously can't live without it. So it's this Mexican standoff thing.
Mm.
Social media rewards appearance, but real life rewards competence. And those two are not the same thing. So there are people who basically look tactical, and then there are people who can function under pressure. And those two groups are very different.
I think that might upset some people, right?
When have we not upset people? First of all, I think we've been upsetting people. You know, you've been there from the beginning. We've been upsetting people since always, and this
Yes.
will probably upset people. But this isn't aimed at anyone specifically. The thing is, I think we've created a culture where people, and when I say we, I mean modern times. This is where we are. We've created a culture where people chase identity before capability. So I would rather look good doing any role, doesn't matter, and look good in a photo. I need to look like so I'm not a special forces operator. Let me not name any branch. So I'd rather look like that. So we've got people chasing identity before the capability. Everybody wants to look like the finished product immediately, um, but very few people are willing to spend years becoming dangerous in a controlled, responsible, competent way. It's about the time.
Let's touch on lone operator now. Is that all of the stuff that you've just said, is that where the idea for lone operator came from?
Yes. Coming from a vast martial arts background, obviously, if you look at the martial arts, and I'll call it the martial arts industry, not to commercialize it, but let's call it the martial arts industry. Um, as such, martial arts have over the years always understood how this whole concept needs to be taught and presented in order for people to build that accountability over time. And Lone Operator came from the realization exactly that courses alone are not enough. People also need progression, they need structure, they need standards, they need repetition, accountability, they need a community, they need benchmarks. They basically need a long-term pathway so that you can progress from a point to another point. Because all of the stuff that I just mentioned, if you follow a long-term pathway, that's where you will get it.
So that's why you structured the program over such a long period.
Exactly, because competency is layered. So we would say that in year one, after year one, you are a competent shooter. You are now competent with your firearm. You're comfortable. You can run your gun comfortably. But you are not efficient yet. So after year two, you become efficient. Right. So that's how this thing is layered. And then after year three, you are now actually qualified to run that gun under pressure situations. So because the competency is layered, we do that. So you cannot shortcut stuff like pressure exposure. You cannot shortcut consistency. Consistency is built over time. Showing up, keeping doing it, trying again and again and again. That's how you build consistency. So the person you are in month one is obviously not the same person you are after 2 or 3 years inside the system. That all differs. If you stand on the outside looking in on our program,
Mhm.
you can see I can put two shooters on the line. One would be in year four, one would be in year one. And you could actually see the difference without having any skills, knowledge, or experience. You can actually see the difference in the two shooters.
You mentioned consistency, well, on a consistent basis. Why is that?
I think there was a period in time where we sort of fell into this thing of motivation. If I'm motivated, I'm going to go to the gym. If I'm motivated, I'm going to do my dry fire. If I'm motivated, I'm going to go to the range. But motivation is not discipline. Discipline is consistency. It's getting up and doing the thing, whether I want to or not, I'm still doing it. So if I've got push-ups to do, I get up and I do push-ups. Or if I've got dry firing to do, I get up and I do dry firing. Whether I like it or not, whether I feel motivated about it or not. So consistency is that. So anybody can be motivated for a weekend, but consistency actually changes the identity.
Mhm.
When somebody trains month after month, keeps showing up day after day, pushes through setbacks, performs under pressure, stays accountable, then they become different people. And I think that's what we are trying to build. Not adrenaline junkies or addicts. We don't want show shooters and you know cool special forces. What we want calm, capable, responsible civilians because at the end of the day, that is who the audience is. He's first and foremost an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor, right? That is that is what consumes 90% of his person and his identity, or 80% or 70%, but the biggest chunk of it is who he is. And then he is a father and a husband and that. And then only is he what we deem a warrior. Okay. And I think the expectation in the market is different. It's like, I have to look like a special forces soldier. I have to act and be a special forces soldier. Where in actual fact, 90% of my time, I get in my car, drive to an office, and I work from a office chair in front of a screen.
Mm.
So we need calm, capable, responsible civilians. That's what we're looking for.
Do you think people sometimes misunderstand the seriousness behind all of this?
Yes, and I think that's part of Fortis's identity. You've been there from the beginning, Rian. You know how we've always trained and taught and actually handle stuff inside, outside of the office, client facing as well as inward. We know how serious this industry is, or how serious um, the outcome is of what we're trying to achieve. Um, so you know what we do about us as Fortis. You know how we treat that. But on the client side, I think people often look at us and think about, oh no, this is all about shooting.
Mm.
This is what they're doing. They're teaching you shooting. No, it's not. It's not just shooting, because shooting is just one of the skill sets. It's one of the tools. So what we're actually trying to build is stuff like resilience, composure, responsibility. Responsibility is a big thing. When are you a responsible citizen? When you are taking yourself and your family's safety and security seriously, and you understand the risk involved, then you become responsible, because then you know what you need to do in order to combat that. And stuff like discipline, performance under stress, and all these principles obviously apply everywhere in life.
I think let's move on to the Allo Club, or the Lone Operator Club. You've said before that Allo Club is basically the end state. Why is that?
I think let's quickly just tell the viewers what Allo Club is. Allo Club is basically year 4 of our program. So from year 4, people have gone through what I would deem everything that we can teach you. Thereafter, it's done. Um, a fist is a fist is a fist. If I make a fist, I roll my hand, I tuck my thumb, I'm sure that my wrists and everything is in line. Now I'm going to hit you with a fist like that. One instructor cannot teach you to make a different fist than the other instructor can. Okay, so there's only so much that you can teach civilians. Thereafter, you start touching on unrealistic stuff like abseiling from choppers and whatnot. Okay, that's obviously not the stuff that we teach. That's not the stuff that we touch on. Okay, so in our first 3 years, we teach people what I would deem um, all that we can teach them in this journey. Thereafter, they need to now start pressure testing that, and this is where the Allo Club comes in. So it's a club format, and that's where everything actually comes together. So all your tactics, all your shooting, the pressure, movement, fitness, decision making, all of that now comes together in one place, because now we put you in scenarios where you have to pressure test whatever we taught you over the first 3 years. And we put a timer on it, and we put some pressure on you. And the idea behind that is for you to look at it and say, you know what, I don't understand the basics of corners today. I've been called out on corners the whole day, so I don't understand that. I need to revisit that and do that again and polish that to ensure that I understand that. I didn't understand the basics of vehicles today, so I'm going to have to go back and do vehicle combat again. And all that is where everything meets in one place. And that's where we're.
So it's basically a tangible way of measuring your growth over the lone operator journey.
Yes. Yes.
There is a
Exactly.
leaderboard in Allo Club. What role does that play?
Okay. I think the moment you hold any form or some sort of competition, you're going to have some form of leaderboard. All right. So, why? The leaderboard for us, for me, is something for myself to measure myself against. It's not to win a provincial competition. So it's to show myself I can measure it over time and see this is my progress. So match 1 in the beginning of the year, I was shooting at this level with all these mistakes. Match 7, I'm now shooting at this level with less mistakes. That's what a leaderboard will show it. So the leaderboard, I think, is misunderstood. People will always think it's ego, but it's actually accountability. It tells you where you are, where you stand. It tells you whether you are improving over time. It tells you whether your training holds up under pressure, because we will call you out if you are making mistakes.
Mm.
Reality is reality, and then timers don't care about feelings.
That is probably then where a lot of people start realizing the difference between having range confidence and actual performance under pressure.
Exactly, and this is dangerous. I need to be careful on this subject, because I don't want to badmouth any of the shooting disciplines in the world. No way at all. I think in actual fact that any shooting discipline has got value and teaches you something. So, but the difference between what we would deem range confidence and actual performance, range confidence really comes about when you think you spend enough time on the range by shooting flat targets and not going through specific drills, and think, okay, well, I can shoot this. And we've seen that many times on courses. Guys come on the course, say, and we would say there's a qualifier, you need to be competent at this level. And then they sign up for that because in their minds, they deem themselves competent and on that level. But when we start putting pressure on them, then they crack under and break under that pressure. So everybody looks good when the conditions are controlled. I've always got this one example. I was training farmers many years ago. That's where we started training farmers, and that's what we did. And the guy was standing with a 357 revolver, and he was shooting, and he could actually hit a piece of grass. That's what he could do. You remember that guy?
Yeah.
Okay. And the moment we said to him, run 20 meters, run back, grab your revolver, and then shoot again, he couldn't hit that grass for nothing. And I mean, a piece of grass is thin. It's a difficult target. But by standing, taking aim, he was looking good. By putting some pressure on him, he started looking, and the more he tried, the worse it became. And that's the problem with pressure. So the truth comes out under fatigue, under pressure, when you're fighting against time, when decision making becomes difficult. That's when your real growth starts happening.
Okay. I think let's move on to BattleFit, which is fairly new in the whole Fortis and lone operator setup. And try to just explain to people why it exists, what purpose it plays in this whole thing. So where does BattleFit fit into this whole scenario?
Okay. From a business viewpoint, BattleFit is a brand on its own. So it's a business on its own. It's doing its own thing. It's got its own identity and its own rules and all kind of things. So when we started Lone Operator, obviously we built in, and it's still built on 3 elements. The one being, I'll call it capability with your firearm or your weapon systems, be it a handgun, a knife, fists, or whatever, carbine, and so forth. So let's call it technical capability of that. The second part would be mindset. Got to understand the criminal mindset. What mindset do I have if somebody invades my house and there's 6 guys trying to kill me and hurt my family? So what mindset do I have? So mindset is the second pillar. And then the third pillar obviously is fitness, what we would deem fitness. And I think that element, fitness, is one of the biggest missing pieces in civilian preparedness. Now, fitness is a topic that we can discuss for hours, because people always say, but what type of fitness? And people think that the fitness that we talk about disqualifies you from lone operator. No, not at all. If you've got a back fusion, or you've just had surgery, you've had a knee operation, you can't bend that knee and so on. Tomorrow you still need to get in your car and live in South Africa. The attack can still happen under those conditions. So when we talk about fitness, we ask, what is functionally fit in your life, in your picture, with your back fusion, with your amputated leg, with your diabetes, with whatever condition you are carrying with you at that stage. So what is functional fitness? And I think that's where it comes in. So we looked at fitness and said, okay, we need to pull this out of the program and sort of put it on its own. So, because I think most people completely underestimate what fatigue and stress do to performance. Right? Your elevated heart rate will affect the way you are thinking about stuff, and if you think wrong, then it's gonna affect your decision making. That is going to elevated heart rate is going to have effect on your shooting, your moving, the emotional control you have over the situation. So if your performance only works when you are comfortable, then obviously your training is incomplete.
So that's why you push things like endurance and zone 2 training so hard.
Yes, look, once again, many ways to get fit, many ways to stay fit. Whether you are cycling, whether you are hiking, whether you are swimming, whether you are triathlon, it doesn't matter. There's many ways to do that. Body weight, beat, and so forth. For us, we try to work the endurance because I need to stay in the fight for as long as the fight continues. So zone 2 is what we are focusing on in Battlefit. Zone 2 training and staying in the fitness, staying in the fight, and enduring. So everybody wants that intensity. So high intensity interval training, but endurance builds capacity, builds your engine. I think Duan has been talking about that a lot on some of the other videos with you.
Yes.
The capacity that you can build up to change how you will perform when you are put under certain stress situations.
Do you think people miss or underestimate how much discipline transfers between fitness and training?
Oh yes, definitely. There's and once again, this is a difficult discussion point, because you can easily step on toes. But yeah, I think people or underestimate this whole thing, missing the point. Because the same person who consistently trains physically, um, can usually stay consistent mentally as well. Why? Because that person is not working on motivation. How I feel today. Do I go to the gym? Do I get up and do 5 push-ups? Do I get up and do dry firing? That person is motivated, and he understands discipline. He understands showing up time and again and again. And all that discipline then compounds at the end of the day, as we said in the beginning. So it comes back to being that overall better, what we would deem fight, full length work.
Okay. I think I'm going to end episode 1 at this point. In episode 2, we'll be discussing things like the Fortis Hub, the total ecosystem that Fortis is busy evolving into, ideas for this very YouTube channel, Battlefit games, and a lot of other very exciting stuff happening inside of Fortis, all in an effort to make you understand exactly what you are buying into. If you enjoyed this discussion, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, smash that bell icon for notifications of new videos. And if you're interested in any of the training offered under Lone Operator and Fortis, there is always a link in the description below. Check it out. We look forward to meeting you on a range one of these days. Dion, thank you so much. See you in episode 2.
Yeah. Thank you.